Good morning, everyone. Half a day, and welcome to Guam. Today, thank you. Our chairman, the governor, and Ken eloquently mentioned our vision. Where are we heading? The opportunities that are before us to really provide our customers, our consumers of Guam, and the economy of Guam a great opportunity in reducing costs, and of course, with through investments, improve the economy. So today, my topic is on renewables, but before we can talk about renewables, we really need to look at the gamut of the other parts that make an electric utility system come together, because it's really a partnership of the utility and the renewables, whether it's the private entities or the net metering customers. It's really a partnership that have always different imbalances, but hopefully together as a whole, we can come up with a balance that will really provide us in Guam a system that we can be proud of over the next several years. I know our commissioner said, when this whole thing came up about US EPA requirement, he said, John, can you work with the team and see how can we, looking into the future, what can we see, maybe solutions that will provide us the best for our utilities and our customers. So with that, I'm going to give you a little bit of where we came from, where we are today, and where we're heading. And with that, slide, please. Our challenges, of course, are high cost of oil, $100 a barrel. Our aging base load generators from the 70s, we have steam generators. Lack of fuel diversity. We're completely on heavy oil and diesel, all oil-based. US EPA has been moving utilities away from oil since the first time it was with Guam Power Authority ages ago. I think they finally came to the point where they're moving us out of oil. So again, that's driving us through this. Decreasing system demand, rightfully so. High energy costs drives lower demand. Increased generator-related outages. We have some intricate problem within our system today that we're trying to solve. And renewables are taking off, and I'll show that to you today. Next, please. Not a very nice curve. From 2005, our energy cost was about $6 a million BTU. Today it's about $18 a million BTU, triple what it was just 9 years ago. Next. What has that done to our rates? It's driven our rates from about 13 cents a kilowatt hour up to 28.7 cents a kilowatt hour. If you look at the red and blue curve, we basically track, that's the field. The green curve is basically our base rate. We've had to adjust, but not very much. There's one of the driving impetus for what we have to do today. Next. Decreasing demand, of course. I just wanted to show you the more recent, and that's since 2010 until today. You can see the blue slope is just heading down. The red is a 12-month trend, and we've been losing about 5 megawatts a year. And the slope is kind of evening out a little bit, but not yet. I will talk that this is really good for Guam, because what is happening now is through demand-side management program, more efficient equipment, all of that, Guam is starting to right size to what is really our energy needs. And why do we want to do that? Because that keeps the money here. About 70% of our rates is oil, and money just comes in and out of this island. So therefore, more demand-side management programs, more efficient equipment. I used to see air conditioners being sold for $299. You know, that's how it's advertised. Today, you're seeing SEERs advertised as the way to sell the products, which is great. So again, this is the result of what's happening with the high rates today. Next. Give you an idea of our base load, not too much, but in the early 70s, we had steam units with as close to 34% of thermal efficiency. That was the technology of efficiency and the technology of choice at the time. In the 90s, we needed to find new, as a result of the growth, we need to find a technology of choice that will give us cheaper energy production. And that came with slow-speed units. As you can see, thermal efficiency is about 40%. Today, we need to look for the technology of choice that will provide us, again, lower costs. And what we're looking at are combined cycle units with thermal efficiencies at about 50% or greater. As you can see, the production rates can go from as high as 23. We can get it, fuel cost per kilowatt hour from as 23 to as perhaps as low as 12. And in some cases, and this 12 cents a kilowatt hour is based on oil equals LNG today. Oil being about $18 a million BTU, and LNG being in the same parameters. Again, we wanted to look at it in a conservative way. Next, please. The impact on US EPA, I won't talk too much, but there's RICE-MAC, EGU MAC. If you add 240 and 220, $460 million that we would have had to invest into the system to become EPA compliant, but no lower cost of energy. In fact, operating costs would have increased. Next. So what are our plans to meet today's challenges? We're planning to deactivate, decommission the steam plants, about 180 megawatts of that. Install combined cycle dual-fired, burning ultra-low sulfur diesel and LNG because they both comply with US EPA regulation. Convert 88 megawatt to slow speed. It still provides 40% thermal efficiency. Convert 40 megawatt simple cycle to LNG for a backup at least a lower cost. Install 40 megawatt of energy storage batteries. And I hope the vote is yes today, Mr. Chairman, so that we can install the 40 megawatts. And again, on this 40 megawatts of battery, we're really looking at capacity versus extended storage. We need capacity today of about 15 to 30 minutes to avoid a lot of the outages that our customers are experiencing today as a result of the loss of a generator. Again, and this is phase one. We expect that we will have to put in more storage batteries over time. And over time, what we're going to be looking for are several hours storage so that we can be able to, again, I'll show you later, smoothing our curve, generate, store energy in the low load periods, and utilize that during our peak, which is a substantial amount at a certain time. Again, pursue an additional 45 megawatts of renewables and complete the plans by 2022. Next. What is our renewable portfolio looking like? First of all, 25 megawatts solar PV by NRG in 2014, right? It's online? Yep, okay, online. 10 megawatts of wind by PGR in 2016. We're doing now with a phase 2 renewable bid between 2014 and 2015. Why is that such a long period of time? Again, so many things are changing within our plants and our utilities, so therefore we really have to take a look at what the pricing, the technologies and all that coming up to give us the best shot in this opportunity that we have today. In the renewable bids, you can be looking at, it's not limited to solar renewable, wind. It could be any type of renewable. It could be OTEC, it could be OTEC, waste to energy, or other things that can occur. But again, that's a renewable bid. Like Ken mentioned this morning, solar rooftop bids in 2014. Ken, net metering is increasing by the hour. So we now have 127 customers. Next. How do we learn? In anticipation of all of this, how do we learn and prepare for this? So I decided to take a look, okay, how is our net metering customers growing today? As you can see, we started in 2009 with about 3 customers, and here we are today. You can't see the number there, but it's about 100 in calendar year 2013. Below that, you start seeing the kilowatts. This is kilowatt now, and it's grown to a total of about 1.3 megawatts. Now, please just note the exponential growth of this graph, and I'll tell you why later. Next, please. So again, we look at our neighbors, the forerunners in renewables, and say, what is happening over there, and what should we learn from them? This is the Hawaiian Islands, the Consolidated Hawaii rooftop solar PV growth. As you can see, they started in 2005 with 1.6 megawatt. Remember where we are today, 1.3 megawatt. So what could happen here? Over the next several years, you can see that growth doubling almost every year. And in fact, in 2012, they had 171, I guess, switch now, megawatts, and expected to double that again in 2013. So again, there's the exponential growth that we should be prepared for. This is the only way that we can, this is one way that we can be prepared to help attract and to sustain the renewable solar PV renewables. Next. So what can Guam's solar PV system look like in the next several years? So I took that 1.3 megawatt and I didn't want to do two because I didn't want to get I'll be frank, scared in one time. So it's using a 1.8 multiplier by calendar year 2020. If the growth continues and sustains itself, we could be at about 70 megawatt of net metering solar PV. Next. What's our renewables portfolio? Here is Public Law 29-62. In 2015, 5% is what we're supposed to meet. 2020, 8%. And by 2035, 25%. So the question is, how are we going to meet that? Well, so far, this is a schedule of renewable commissioning that I thought maybe is applicable for us here. The contracted NRG PV comes online in 2014. So there's I'm looking at calendar year 2015 now. PGR comes in 2016. Phase 2 renewable totaling about 45 megawatts. Net metering growth. I took those numbers from the graph I showed you earlier. They grew at that rate. Therefore, it could be that in calendar year 2020, that we could be at about 22%. Certainly, well above what our RPS standard is for Guam. And again, it's not inconceivable that this is going to happen here for us. So certainly, by our next target is 8% by 2020, and we're well on the way to meeting that. Next, please. Oh, okay. I like graphics. So here it is, calendar year 2014. It's a daily energy production. I took 250 megawatts of our daily load curve and say what part of that will be the solar PV and how is the rest of the system. As you can see, the green is our new 2014 NRG 25 megawatt of capacity, generating that much energy throughout the day. The rest is all heavy oil, and then the light blue there is typically sometimes we'll use at the peak diesel engine peakers. So again, there's the curve later this year. And so next, where we want to go, where we believe we're heading, and that's why we're here today, looking at snapshot in time, 2020. There's about 120 megawatts of PV, and there's your dock. I think a lot of those docks are seen in all the other regions that have solar PV. And below it, I like to use blue. I was informed blue will be clean energy. And then the light blue there is the ultra low sulfur diesel. But actually, what it is energy storage battery. This is part of our vision, so that perhaps during the day we can charge with renewables or LNG, and then during the evening offset all that the peaking demand units with an energy storage battery. So again, that's our profile for 2020. Next. Oh, looking at our neighbors again. Please take a look at that, the blue and the aqua. The blue is the blue is their daily load curve, very similar to ours. The aqua is the solar PV that is being generated. And here, the green is actually, this is just incorporated within the production of the blue, in the production of energy in the blue net load. They have about 40 megawatts of wind, I believe, and then about 100 megawatts of solar PV. So again, the curve I showed you earlier, what Guam will be looking like, this is actually what's happening in the island of Oahu. And this is I didn't really know this until I started having to prepare for this conference. I got to Google all of this, and wow, interesting. That's how, next. Maui is 1,000 megawatt capacity load demand. Maui is about 200, but in this case it's about 160 or 160. And like I said earlier, Guam is 250. So we're kind of in between the two. And so what I understand with the Hawaiian electric system is that most of the energy, the highest RPS achieved has been on the islands of Maui, Hawaii Electric versus the main city of Oahu. And part of that is, of course, is where the energy costs in Maui and Hawaii are over in the higher 30 cents a kilowatt hour versus Oahu, which is in the lower 30. And so that's where I believe all of this renewables are, again, coming into play. But note the curve, just like Guam, what the dock that's going to happen, just like Guam, and all of that. So again, it's very good to have neighbors that are unfortunate for them, but fortunate for us that we can learn from going through all this process. So that we can get their knowledge and see how we incorporate it into our system to be able to accommodate all forms of renewables and be prepared for it. Next. I went one step further and I did read their integrated resource plan, at least their summary. So I evaluated what are they doing and compared to what we are doing today. Our team from Sport, Jennifer, John, and others have really worked on our integrated resource plan. So what I wanted to do was compare. Is there anything that we're missing that they're doing today, that we're missing today and not preparing for? So when I looked at it, the activation of older units, they're deactivating their steam units. Change mode of operating. Steam units are now operating from base load, their intermediate load, or minimum loads. Install new efficient quick starting age-old multi-fuel engines. That's what we're trying to do today, looking at dual firing. Convert residual oil to LNG and US and ultra-low sulfur diesel. That's what's happening again. They're really working to try and even get ISO container LNG in as quickly as possible to comply with the US EPA and meet their loads. So similarly to us. Again, convert existing units to LNG. Our slow speeds are in the plans to be converted. Install energy storage batteries. We got the money now. We're going to be moving forward. Install smart grid system. Well, we have a smart grid system in place now. What we're going to do is look at all the tools that are available from that for us and be able to utilize that to, again, allow for the additional penetrations as best we can. Implement demand response. That's something we've been discussing, that perhaps down the road here, instead of having all these standby generators looking at our customers to be the demand side for demand response, where we can utilize your backups as our backup, and therefore we can minimize the amount of capacity we have and maintain all the time. So again, interruptible load, that's kind of talking about. Review rate models for fairness. They're looking at it, and again, as all of these PVs and all these other renewables are growing, they are recognizing the imbalance of the rates, where again, net metering customers are offsetting the full rate and at the increasing cost for non-metering customers. Meet RPS mandates. They do have higher mandates than we do, but again, we both have RPS mandates that we're striving for. Next. Summary. Our integrated resource plan is very similar to Hawaii, to HECO, and when I say HECO, the consolidated system, a front runner in renewables. This provides Guam the opportunity to take advantage of the lessons learned by HECO and other utilities. Renewables in Guam is taking off, and GPA is preparing its grid. Our regulatory models have become more complex, with customers generating portions of the electricity and the growing numbers of independent power producers seeking to sell electricity to the utility. As more customers generate their electricity while yet connected to the grid, it leaves fewer customers to pay for the grid system, capital, and energy non-fuel operating costs. A balance will eventually need to be reached. It is not a deterrent to renewables. Is that we, as part of this whole picture again, as we look forward, we really need to find a balance. How do we find that balance that will promote both and at the same time take care of all the other customers that don't have the opportunity to be on renewables? And finally, Guam's near future energy mix will certainly be substantially different than today. GPA has begun the journey to implement its integrated resource plan, a clean fuel burning grid with highly efficient, quick reacting generating units, energy storage batteries, utility contracted renewables, and customer renewables is on the horizon for the next generation. So with that, thank you.
Thank you very much. And the first time I came to Guam was in 1982. I fell in love with Guam then. I'm very glad to be back here now. I've been back here now for about 2 years. I just want to thank GPA for allowing the GREA organization to speak today, so thank you very much. Guam Renewable Energy Association. Next slide. We are a brand new trade association. We formed actually in August of 2013. We have not been around that long. When I first came back to Guam, I was here for about 3 or 4 months. There was an association that was bringing a speaker off island. Was a EPC contractor that talked about renewable energy and the economics of renewable energy and the implementation of renewable energy. And I thought, you know, from getting around and talking to most of the trades throughout the island, the experts in renewable energy are here on island. Why are we bringing people from off island to talk about renewable energy? We're already here. So we started the Guam Renewable Energy Association. Our mission statement is to lower the carbon footprint here on Guam while helping the community reduce their energy costs. I mean, that's our whole mission statement. Next slide. 25 member companies that we've had in the short time that we've been in existence. We have over 120 members right now. And our members consist of solar energy contractor, EPC contractors, LED lighting experts, lighting experts, energy auditors, engineers, architects, and EPC companies. 7 board members, and we meet monthly at the Guam Energy Office. Right here is a picture of a proclamation that we did in November 19th of 2013, and the governor signed that proclamation instituting October in Guam as Renewable Energy Month. Next slide. This is one of the accomplishments that we've actually done since we've been in association. We were a big push behind Bill 7432, and thank you to the senators and to the governor that supported that bill. It's actually Law 3295 now. That's enabling the Department of Education, the 40 schools, and the administration building to come out for power purchase agreements. And right now the GSA is actually working on that bill, or on that RFP, and we're hoping that that's going to be out in the next 60 days. About a month ago, they came out for a request for information, so that allowed everybody to give some highlights or just some information of items that we believe should be in that RFP. One that I really pushed for personally with my company was installing kiosks, solar kiosks in the school. This is something that we did in my hometown. I ran a company in New Jersey for 18 years. We did a lot of schools with solar energy. You put in a solar kiosk for the kids. It's an interactive kiosk, and it just starts getting the children involved in how important renewable energy is and how you could save money. So it was that was very neat. That worked out very well, and that's one of the big pushes behind GREA, because We need to educate our children. Us as a generation here, we're only going to be able to take it so far, so that's the next generation that's going to take it all the way home. That's what we believe. Thank you. Next slide. Another big initiative this year that we're actually working on a bill is the PACE program. It's Property Assessed Clean Energy. The residential side had a little bit of a pullback a couple years ago from the FHFA, which oversees Fannie and Freddie Mac. They didn't want the PACE program to hold the senior loans on the property, but commercial PACE is alive, and we're working on or following really the state of Connecticut that's getting around that residential program. So we're hoping to institute that here in Guam. It can either be funded, by a government and quasi-government, third-party financing that's working very well right now in Stockton, California, and Connecticut. It allows people with very limited cash flow, people that don't have, I'm going to say, outstanding credit, and it enables people to put renewable energy systems on their buildings, whether it be residential, commercial, zero money down, and then amortizing the payments over an 20-year payment structure. By doing that, we did the financials on that. You can take somebody now who, I'm just going to give an average of a $300 utility bill and actually bring that down to about $190 by doing it that way. So it works out. It gives people more disposable income. In businesses, it puts the money back into your bottom line. I believe there's a lot of us in here that are business owners. Right now, 40% of your money in your business is going towards your utility. So we need that money back, into our balance sheets. And, with residential property owners, it gives us more disposable income. What happens with that income, as we all know, it goes back into, paying taxes, business-to-business commerce, and, allowing people to take vacations, and just takes that burden of a high utility bill. So PACE program, I believe, is great for Guam. So that's one of GRIA's big initiatives. Next slide. These are other initiatives that we feel really, really important, and we've set up committees within GRIA who are actually taking over these committees and making this happen. One is the education aspect, which is working with the private and public sector. It just amazes me every time I talk to people. The first question that always gets pushed back to me is, solar energy or LED lighting or any time of or any efficiency or renewable energy technology, way too expensive, forget it. Well, that's where we come in, and we have to educate people because, Guam is entitled to the 30% ITC credit. That's business and residential. And on the business end, you get the accelerated depreciation. That goes away in 2016, but it's still in play right now. With the economies of scale and renewable energy technologies coming down, renewable energy right now is affordable. And another thing with the education, what we're trying to do is couple that together with a community outreach. GRIA members have already dedicated ourselves. I'm going to say we have 5 companies that want to take certain groups right now, nonprofit organizations. We're looking into the Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts. There's a few others that we want to get together, hold some fundraisers, some mixers, and put free renewable energy systems on these facilities, helping the nonprofits out. So that's something that we're working towards. Another committee that we have, best practice standards. Very important. I spent a lot of time down in Australia, out in the Outback. I spent a lot of time up in the Marshalls, the Federated States. I've toured the North Pacific extensively. And one of the things that I hate to see is contractors come in, they charge an astronomical amount of money to install these systems. There's no maintenance. The preventative maintenance taught. There's no spare parts. And without that, after a year or 18 months, these systems are defunct. You can go all through the Federated States and all through the Marshall Islands extensively and see these systems that were put in. They spent a lot of money for them, and they no longer work. I believe that that really puts a damper on our industry, so we're trying very hard to police Guam on best practice and not let that happen here. Government, of course, lobbying the legislature for smart policies. And then I really want to emphasize that, smart policies for the island of Guam. Working together with the utility, working together with GPA, working together with the government, working together with the community, and coming up with policies that work. On the financing end, PACE is a great financing tool that can be used for the community. There's some other funds that we're actually working on, trying to bring into the island of Guam that we feel will work out very, very well and enable this industry to move forward. I don't want to say rapidly because we really want to keep a handle on the growth, but just give access to capital, because that's another pushback with the industry right now, is access to capital. Next slide. Training. Right now we have Solar Energy International coming in June. They're actually going to be training 40 of our members of GRIA in solar energy. Every company, my company, I've trained 2 crews here, but we want formalized training. So SEI, we got them aboard. They're coming on. I think we're trying to work with the University of Guam or GCC also to make that happen. But that's something that needs to be done. This is a brand new industry, especially here on Guam, but training, giving people opportunities, training them in this new industry, they'll be able to work not only here in Guam, but in Micronesia and throughout the world. So we're pretty excited about that. Partners in energy. GPA has allowed GRIA to form a working group with GPA. We are trying to sit down with the Guam Power Authority once a month. We believe that we are partners in energy. We believe as the years move forward here, technologies in renewable energy, not just solar, but all the technologies, are going to be coming down. In the last 3 years, most of the monies that have been put into the inverters and solar modules and renewable energy have been dumped into battery storage. So working together with the Guam Power Authority and just working out issues and bumps in the road. One of the major issues that we've been working together on has been net metering. This is not a new debate. This is something that has been a shoe, or a rock in everybody's shoe here, I think, in the renewable energy industry. And, right now GPA does pay retail rate for net metering, which we feel is fantastic. Arizona, in, I believe it was November, came up with a service charge. So any solar energy customer, they wanted $50 to $100 extra placed on the bill for a solar energy customer. They settled on 70 cents a kilowatt installed. So an average system residential of 5 kilowatts, it's $3.50. SEIA, which is our big organization in the United States, the Solar Energy Industries Association, viewed that as a win. I viewed that as a loss. With the GRIA organization or association, because it really nets, it never placed a formula on what we believe what solar energy is worth. So I was really glad to see Minnesota, and this just came out. I read a draft of the report. I'm waiting to get the full report. But Minnesota came out with a value for solar, and that was a formula that I'm pretty excited about. I read the draft. I like it so far. But at our next working group meeting, we're going to be working with GPA, and hopefully that's going to be one of the issues on the agenda. It makes it fair, I believe, for the utility and for the solar energy customer. It stops the cross subsidies against solar energy customers and non-solar energy customers, and it actually uncouples that from the retail rate on net metering. So I think that's an outstanding program. So We need to do more research on that, but we'll wait to see how that pans out. And it is an alliance. We're forming an alliance with the Guam Power Authority. You know, I always get, people come up to me every day, and it's always, well, you know, we're the good guys, they're the bad guys. Well, they weren't the bad guys 40 years ago or 30 years ago or 20 years ago when it was the only energy on the island. So they're not the bad guys, and we're not the good guys. We're two industries working together to, number one, help the world, help Guam, get the dependence off of fossil fuel, which we all want. You know, the two climate reports came out, the Oceanic and the UN. If you haven't read them, get online or please see me after. They're absolutely horrible. You know, they're predicting just in the Micronesia Pacific region that we'll lose 3 feet of shoreline, or the seas are going to rise 3 feet by the year 2100. Now, 3 feet, what does that do? The island of Kiribati is gone. Most of the atolls in the Federated States of Micronesia, they are gone. So it's a serious problem. I feel, you know, as business owners, we're always looking at the bottom line, you know, where's the dollar? But, you know, this is also a social problem. You know, we are the keepers of this world right now. So this is a serious problem that we need to look into. So, next slide. Some of the technologies that I think are fantastic for Guam, and technologies that came down significantly. The first solar install I did on a commercial level was in New Jersey. It was 5 schools. That sold for $12 a watt. That was in 2003, $12 a watt. In 2008, solar modules were still at $3 a watt. Last year, or not last year, 2012, I've seen solar modules as cheap as 50 cents a watt. They're starting to come back up now. The glut in the world supply now is gone. There's some problems with some anti-dumping laws coming up, so modules will be going up. But solar energy is here to stay. The technologies are good. The inverters are good. Technology is solid. You know, you have solar panels out there right now, 25, 30-year warranties on the panels. You can get inverters out there now for 20-year warranties. It's a proven, bankable technology. And a pretty exciting stat that I just read the other day, but first quarter 2014, now this is globally, but 9 gigawatts have been installed first quarter 2014. I mean, that's the highest that we've ever done globally. I think that's fantastic, and now they're predicting that it's going to move so fast in Q1 15, they're looking at now 50 gigawatts. So pretty exciting stats. What's that going to do for Guam? Hopefully renewable energy, solar energy will come down even more. Next slide. Battery storage. This is something that as an industry we've been looking at for a long time. We believe it's a savior for our industry, and that's on the supply and demand side, utility scale and even residential scale. I was pretty excited because Solar City right now is teamed up with Telsa. They're actually doing battery storage for residential systems right now in the United States, and I heard they started now in Hawaii. We've always thought that that was too cost prohibitive. I didn't think that we were going to see that for another 5 years. It's going on now. So that is even another, that's going to be another key play in the net metering issue, because now that energy, that overproduction of energy will not be exported back to the grid. It's going to be stored. So we think that that's pretty exciting. And in the last 3 years, all the research and development money has not been going into solar modules or inverters. All that money now is going into battery storage. So battery storage is going to be a big industry coming up here. Last month, or not last month, in February, California made a mandate that they're going to go ahead and implement 1,325 megawatts of storage by 2020. That's a game changer. Right now, China is one of the leaders in battery storage. Believe me, in a couple of years, the United States is going to be the leader in battery storage. Next slide. These are technologies that are on island now that companies are selling, and they're really gaining a lot of favor. One I really like, I didn't like it at first, but it's starting to become a proven technology, solar air conditioners. So even with the Fujitsus, the Mitsubishis, the 27 SEER units, these solar air conditioners now are 30 to 70% energy savers under that DC inverter type technology. So pretty exciting. LED lighting, of course, an average load on lighting for a business is 10 to 15%, and you can cut that in half with LED, virtually in half. Numerous solar thermal technologies on the island right now. Power factor correction. I come from the old electrical background of capacitor bank technology for power factor correction, but there's a new Chinese technology on the island and an American technology on the island that's, they're both pretty exciting. So, next slide. Smart policies, and I can't stress that enough, and it's working together to adopt these. I don't ever consider myself, the smartest person in the room, but collectively working together, we are the smartest people in the room. So we have to work together to eliminate the roadblocks and just secure our independence from fossil fuel. And with that, I talked about the value for solar policy. Minnesota just did that. I think that's a major breakthrough for our industry. So we'll definitely be discussing that coming up. Next slide. And my last. If anybody's interested, please, in the Guam Renewable Energy Association, please see me afterwards. We have some great member companies in our association that are doing some tremendous things. So again, thank you to GPA for allowing me to speak. Thank you.
We're going to get Desiree up here. Desiree is with NAVFAC, as I mentioned earlier, and she's going to talk to us a little bit about what the Navy is doing in our world here in Guam. Desiree.
Thank you, Zig. Thank you, GPA, for including the Navy. About a year ago, I guess, I had a conversation with one key GPA member, John Cruz, while we were sitting here in this hotel chatting. And he just happened to mention that he wanted the Navy to put up so many megawatts of renewables. So as the Regional Energy Program Manager, of course, one of my goals is to meet our renewable energy goals. So I was very pleased to hear that GPA also wants to move ahead with renewables, because that helped, of course, give us another push that we need to move forward. So next slide, please. So I'm just going to give you an overview of what we're doing here, what our goals are, what we've looked at so far, what we're currently doing here, and the next steps. So next slide, please. The Navy has had energy goals for quite a while, and we've been recently investing lots of money in energy. That's one of the Navy's big priorities now, for many of the reasons that have already been discussed here, including energy security. So one of the first ways that we choose to tackle this is, of course, to reduce our energy. That's the best way to meet your renewables, is not to use it in the first place. So that's been our focus for the past few years, and we've invested a lot of money. And here on the installations, Anderson and Naval Base Guam, we've invested quite a bit of money, millions, and continue to do so on energy efficiency projects. So we are moving forward with getting those constructed, and we hope to start seeing the results of the reductions soon this year. And maybe that's part of the reason the reductions have shown up on GPA's charts. The Navy also, on top of what the federal mandates are to reduce energy, came up with their goal for this region. They want Navy on Guam to reduce our energy consumption by 41% by 2020. So moving forward then, that on the efficiency, from efficiency to renewables. So we have numerous renewable energy goals, from federal to DOD to Secretariat goals. And most recently, actually, presidential goals that have come down. So the most strict goal that we have that I don't even list here is called the 1 gigawatt goal that President Obama announced in his 2012 State of the Union address. And he mentioned that the Navy had agreed to install 1 gigawatt of renewable energy by 2020. So here we are, and on Guam, which looks like an obvious great opportunity to achieve some of that goal. And that's kind of the push that's come down now from the Pentagon is, where are we? We need to move there. And we're very delighted because everything is kind of coming into place in a type of a perfect storm, where we've got a new Assistant Secretary for the Navy of Installations who came from the American Council on Renewable Energy. So he's just started coming from that background, very serious now about renewable energy. We've got GPA now with their IRP, pressure from EPA to make a change. So the time is right. Next slide, please. So where are we so far? What have we done so far on Guam on the installations, Andersen Air Force Base and Naval Base Guam? Well, we've installed some solar. Through a finance project a few years ago, we did install 250 kilowatts of solar. And the Navy's also very interested in how any new systems will withstand typhoons. So this is where the islands coming on with renewables and the Philippines and demonstrating the typhoon resistance is going to help us. So we're doing also demonstrations. This is an example of a rooftop photovoltaic system where we're checking the adhesive to see if it will withstand high winds. Next slide, please. Some other demonstrations we're doing are both with energy efficiency and renewables, doing things like liquid desiccant air conditioning that uses solar to recharge the desiccant, looking at the adhesive force on holding down the sticking power against winds of building integrated photovoltaic. We're doing plug load studies, completed heat pump, hot water heaters, and integrated solar thermal systems. So we're doing our fair demonstration as well because we've got unique environment here on Guam. Next slide, please. So one of the Secretary's initiatives was initially to get 50% of installations to be net zero for electricity by 2020. So they initially moved forward and did a high-level study with the assistance of the National Renewable Energy Lab to look at 10 installations, and Guam was selected as one of those installations because we have a high energy cost and great solar resources. So these are the results of the Renewable Energy Lab's study. And keep in mind, this is a tabletop study, so once you get more into the details of things, these numbers will change. But from a top study using their models they have about renewable efficiencies and costing, this is what they came up with. So the green bar is the brown power we buy now. And then the charts after it, to the right, the middle chart is what it would take to get to net zero for electricity on Naval Base Guam. The yellow, you might notice, the yellow is actually energy that we will not be consuming because that's efficiency. So as you can see, a big chunk of how to get to net zero is to not use energy at all. Then the purple, of course, is the wind portion, and the light blue is the PV, and the red is what we would buy back in credits because we still wouldn't be able to make up that difference. The far right column represents what is life cycle cost effective. So what Department of Energy's Renewable Energy Lab showed was that in order to meet that sweet spot where you'd be most cost effective, you'd have that mix of wind, solar efficiency, and you'd still be using some base load power from the grid. Next slide, please. Then, of course, they did the same thing for Andersen Air Force Base. So this is the mix for Andersen Air Force Base. As you can see, for them, there's a little bit more solar, a little less wind. And by the way, this would equate to, achieving this would equate to over 66 megawatts of capacity and over 800 acres total for both installations. So this is the initial direction now that everybody is interested in. How is Guam going to meet this? Next slide, please. This is an illustration that we put together for acquisition purposes. We got together, the first thing we were trying to do a year ago after talking to John Cruz was to sit down and figure out, well, how are we going to acquire all of this? And of course, similar to GPA, we've got a lot of acquisition and legal hurdles. So we wanted to see if we could clear the way there as we're moving through the technical aspects. So we set up a few different models. In this one, for example, there'd be a wind turbine, but we wouldn't be able to use the turbine on DOD property, so it would go off to the grid. Next slide, please. The next example would be something like putting up rooftop and having, of course, that electricity going right into the buildings. So that one is one that the Navy, acquisition-wise and legally-wise, was most comfortable with. The next slide, please. And the next slide would be, we'd have a big system, multi-megawatt system that would feed into the grid on the installation, so it wouldn't go off the installation at all. So these are some models we used to work through the acquisition, and I can say that the politics have changed. There were a lot of, it looked like a year ago there were a lot of hurdles, but since then there's been push now to really start implementing these projects. So next slide, please. This is the final slide. This is where we are now. We've got a bunch of acquisition tools. Where we are now, however, is to step back and do an assessment, which we started with the on the net zero study, to look at all of the potential sites on the installations on Guam, Naval Base and Andersen, to really pinpoint the sites, the locations, and possibly the type of renewable that could go on those sites so that we can have a complete picture. And then once we get the sites, then we can go out to start to find out how we're going to acquire those. So the timeline is getting shorter as the political pressure from the Pentagon, the hunger to get renewables installed to meet the president's initiative is coming to closer to the 2020 deadline. And we're really excited that GPA also is moving in that direction, and it looks like our timelines could coincide nicely so that perhaps we could complement what GPA is doing and they could complement what we're doing. We understand that the Navy is not, and the Air Force are not just separate, that what goes on the island affects us as well as what we do on our installations affect the island because it's an interconnected grid. We don't have the luxury of hopping to other grids or other companies like they do stateside, so we do recognize the need to work and coordinate our efforts, and it's exciting times ahead. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Mr. Richard Grosdidier. Richard is the Senior Vice President, Commercial Execution with Energy Solar LLC.
Thank you to the Commission and GPA for inviting us to come and speak with you today. It's always a pleasure to come back to Guam. It's great to look out in the audience and see so many friends that we've established. It's for us, and I speak for all of NRG, it's been nothing but a very positive relationship that we've experienced here on the island with GPA, the Commission, and our newfound business partners here in Guam. So we'd like to thank everybody for the warm welcome and the positive approach to having solar succeed here. So thank you for that. Before I start, I'd like to introduce one of my colleagues, Mark Rolick, who's a senior director who's here with us. So as we have breaks, please reach out to Mark for any questions also about NRG Solar. I thought I would start out giving a little bit of a background on NRG. I don't know how many of you know NRG, and my purpose in doing that is not to brag, not to show off, not to advertise, but really show the resources that we can bring to bear to Guam, because we are a substantial company. NRG Energy facts first. NRG Energy is our parent company. It's the largest independent power company in the United States. It's a Fortune 300 company. It's traded on the New York Stock Exchange. Last check I did, which was, I believe, Thursday of last week, we had a market cap of about $10.3 billion. Annual revenues in excess of $11 billion and growing. And we now own and operate in excess of 54,000 megawatts. Again, the largest independent power company in the United States. From a renewables perspective, we're the third largest renewable company. We recently acquired Edison Mission Energy's entire generating fleet, including their wind fleet. We're the largest U.S.-based solar company. We are the third largest wind company now with the acquisition of EME Energy. In terms of solar assets in operation, we sit at 1,200 megawatts today. In bringing that 1,200 megawatts to operation, we've raised over $6 billion in the last 4 years, and we've put somewhere in the neighborhood of $2 billion of our own money to make those deals happen. On the wind side, we sit at about 1,700 and change in megawatts, and total renewables are just shy of 3,000 megawatts. So that's a little snapshot about NRG Renewables. One of the other things that we accomplished last year that was a first in kind was the first yield co in the United States, which is a vehicle to raise capital at a very low cost, on a very low cost basis. We raised that by selling only less than 30% of our renewable portfolio and some of our gas-fired portfolio. Perfect blend, putting those two type of assets into the yield co, because one is tax heavy, the other is tax light, cash flow driven. Creates essentially a synthetic tax equity deal transaction within inside the yield co. That was the first of a kind. We raised nearly $500 million, selling less than 30% of our renewable company through that. So may we have the next slide, please? Thought we'd talk a little bit about the successful financing that the solar project went through late last year, actually on New Year's Eve. We call this the other people's money test. We can believe in something, but until we convince others to put their money in, it really doesn't bear out. And when we took the project to market, as we'll discuss here in a moment, there was great reception from the financial institutions, and we'll talk about why. After acquiring the project and addressing the open development issues, particularly the expanded wetlands that we needed to address, we then began the process of taking the project to market. Some of the banks that we went to are highlighted on the right. That's not all of the banks we went to, but we ran a very competitive process. And I thought it was important that we talk today about what the financial community liked about the project, right? So we can repeat that next time around and ensure success. They liked the terms of the power purchase agreement. They found those highly financeable and comparable to U.S.-based deals, which is a real positive. They liked the financial stability of GPA and the island of Guam. That was very important to them, making a long-term investment. We're looking at construction plus 18 years, debt term. They liked the economic benefit that the project brought to Guam. It wasn't just an investor making a huge return, but rather it was a sharing. I get too excited, I'm part Italian, right? So it was a sharing. Guam was benefiting, We were benefiting. They liked that fact, that it brought savings that we'll talk about later to Guam. They like the locational diversification. There hasn't been a financing in Guam for quite some time. I think back to the project financing, that goes back to the Marianas project years ago. And the other thing that was very, very important to them is the history of GPA in Guam in meeting their obligations under existing contracts. That was a key. When they took the deal to credit committee, that was a key point that they stressed in getting the deal approved. So, you know, congratulations to having built that reputation. That's not easy to do. So the strength of the project, the parties allowed us to run a very competitive project process, raising the financing and securing competitive terms. Next slide, please. In the end, we selected Mizuho Bank. Mizuho Bank is a Japanese global bank. They underwrote the entire transaction and syndicated down to DZ Bank. In order to maintain a timely close, we wanted to close the deal by the end of the year. That was one of the mandates we had from our management. So it required a lot of coordination between the banks, the independent engineers, the legal parties that were involved to structure and negotiate the documents. We closed New Year's Eve 2013, and again, wanted to stress that GPA's timely assistance in that process was key to being able to execute that close last year. So thank you, Graham. I know you spent a lot of hours helping us with that, and Ken and others, so thank you very much. We really appreciate that. A brief note on the terms. The total debt that we raised was $108 million, and the tenor is pretty exciting. I mean, for those of you who deal in project finance, you may appreciate this more than those who don't, but to raise construction plus 18 years in today's environment when most banks want to lend on a shorter term basis, we thought was quite an accomplishment. So, you know, stretching that amortization out benefited the project. So again, it goes back to the strong fundamentals that the project has. Next slide, please. I think some of these items were touched on earlier, but we wanted to just talk briefly about some of the site-specific, I won't call them challenges, but I would call them some of the unique aspects of implementing solar here in Guam, and we thought we'd just take a moment to talk about those. The wind speed was mentioned before. I think Desiree mentioned that. That was something that we knew from the beginning we had to find a solution, and we did through the right racking supplier and the right panel suppliers and getting the right warranties and guarantees around that risk. That was critical to support the financing and to meet the local requirements, quite frankly. The frequent and heavy rainfalls, predicting the impact of that on construction, and you know, building a schedule that would support a realization that the moderate and hot temperatures, the high humidity, and the active seismic reason, which doesn't sound all that interesting except when you try to price insurance and you're located in a situation like that. So we used, again, talk about resources that a large company that can bring to bear. We used all of our clout with the underwriters that insure NRG to drive that insurance cost down on the project. Another very key area, and Mark worked a lot on this, was the respect for the wetlands and the definition of the wetlands and making sure that we did not impede or invade upon the wetlands and were sensitive to the local environmental concerns. And the soil exhibited some corrosive characteristics which we had to design around also. So these were some of the challenges that as a team we worked through. Next slide, please. Thank you. Construction project progress, where do we stand, just in brief. Currently we have weekly design meetings with GPA to assess the progress, and it's been a coordination with GPA. You know, they need to approve all the designs and plans as we go through the process, and you know, it's just been, thank you, Ken, for making your team available for that. Construction docks for the transmission line are complete. The construction docks for the GPA sign-up for the substations are complete, and I believe under final review, Mark, if I'm not mistaken. So you signed them? I was wondering what you were signing. Thank you for doing that, Ken. That's great. As to the construction, The solar site is 100% cleared, and all the grub work and earthen work is done. Surveying and site layout is complete. Panels and racking systems are being staged. In fact, over 50% of the panels now reside at the site. And I don't know if anyone's been out there in the last few days, but we're actually driving piles. And that's, in our experience, having built 1,200 megawatts of solar in the last 4 years, that's when it gets exciting, because that's when it starts to pick up and the pace picks up. So we're very excited to hit that milestone. The construction offices are on site. They're occupied by the construction personnel. The transmission line contractor has been selected and is mobilized on site. Let's see, what else? And I think in terms of jobs, I mean, not an exact estimate, but just what we're projecting, what Boeing is predicting, and Sonora, which is the subcontractor to Boeing, is predicting, is somewhere in the range of 100 to 125 jobs during the construction period. So that's pretty exciting. Next slide, please. Just a bit of a sketch of the agencies that we've been dealing with as we've been finalizing the project. And again, we just put them up here really to recognize and thank them for their cooperation, because that's what we've had from these agencies. It's been a rapid process. It's been a positive process, and we're very grateful for everyone's appreciation. Without that, I should say focus and diligence, without that, we wouldn't be where we are, actually. So thanks to all these agencies for their help. Just to close with a few of the project details, if we could have the next slide, please. And I hope I'm going to pronounce this name right, but the project is located in Malolo. Did I get that right? Okay, thank you. As Ken mentioned earlier in one of his comments, the site is 160 acres of previously used farmland. We purchased the land. It's owned by the project subsidiary, NRG Solar Dan LLC. The nameplate capacity of the project is 25.65 megawatts. From an AC perspective, DC perspective, it's 36.6 megawatts. Interconnection voltage, 34.5 kilovolts. Interconnection through a SGIA, which is a small generator interconnection agreement at Talofofo, approximately 6 miles from the plant. So we'll be interconnecting about 6 miles from the plant. We're building an underground transmission line to be create the least amount of intrusion to the local community as possible. We're using crystalline silicon technology. There'll be about 122 modules when the plant is completed. Rest assured, this is the most proven technology that's utilized in the solar field, and it's the most prevalent throughout the world. The modules will be fixed tilt at an 8-degree angle. The two suppliers of the modules are Canadian Solar and Trina. These are formidable suppliers, two of the top in the world. We've done a lot of business with them over the years, so we're highly comfortable with them. And the proof is in the pudding. The banks are willing to finance them. So, and in terms of the mix of panels, about 17% will be 285-watt panels. Approximately 25% will be 300-watt panels, and the balance, or 58%, will be 305-watt panels. Next slide, please. The EPC contractor for the project is Boeing Company. The major subcontractor is one of our subsidiaries, which is Sonora Energy Solutions. Now we get to some exciting facts, I think. The plant will provide clean energy that will provide electricity for about 10,000 homes here on island. It will offset approximately 2 billion barrels of residual fuel during the 25-year life of the PPA. Secondly, the clean energy generated from this solar plant is expected to cut the annual carbon dioxide emissions by more than 40,000 metric tons. It's the equivalent of taking nearly 7,300 cars off the road here in Guam. And if my research on Google was correct, I think there's about 98,000 registered cars here in Guam. So that's a pretty big, significant percentage if you look at it from that perspective. From a savings perspective, over the life of about $300 million in fuel cost. Net savings to the project, net of the PPA payments, is about $100 million according to GPA. The first year production estimate is about 60,000 megawatt hours. The degradation of the panels, and these panels do degrade, but that's taken into account in the economics, in the production profiles, and in the PPA requirements. Per guarantee by the suppliers, about 0.7% per year. There's, two PPAs, as we've highlighted earlier, a 20 and a 5.65 megawatt PPA. And from a permitting perspective, all the discretionary permits are in hand, and the ministerial permits have either been issued or in process. So that's a bit of an update on our progress. I thought we would end with a few photos from the site. If we can go to the next slide. This is a blessing ceremony that we recently had at the site. Next slide, please. This shows the clearing and the grubbing that's gone on at the site and the site contours that we had to design around. The next slide says further roadway preparation. And the final slide, you can see the pallets to the right. Those are the panels that are stored on the site. And unfortunately, I don't have a slide here showing the exciting part, which is the driving the panels and really getting underway there. So again, thank you for the invite, Commissioner. Thank you, Ken and GPA, and it's been a pleasure to be here. We look forward to doing lots of business on Guam, and NRG is a long-term investor, and we're here for the long run. So thank you very much.
So solar's here to stay, and we can see the price starting to come down a little bit. GPA is a co-op of sorts. The people own the utility. But there are a great deal of folks here on Guam that just are disadvantaged for many reasons. And how do we get solar into their homes and make it affordable for those folks that are just struggling on a day-to-day basis?
And that's where I think the PACE program comes into play. Because with PACE, there's no credit checks, no money down, and what happens with PACE is it's securitized against the property. I like the third-party financing model. I think that works. Public-private, I think that works very, very well. Mm-hmm. But it's securitized against the property. So in a business, you're not carrying it on your balance sheet. If you're a residential homeowner, it's not going against your credit. And it enables you to sell the property and just roll that over onto the next owner of the property. So securitized against the property, it can be in the form of if GPA got involved, a utility bill. It can be in the form of a property tax bill. So there's different ways to fund that program. But for people that are really struggling, I think PACE is a good way. There's other programs that were introduced into the island. It's a lease program, solar lease, that is starting to hit the island now, and I think will start growing. So that's going to be another option. But of course, with a lease or a PPA, it has to be very credit-worthy customers. So I think for people that are really struggling and who really want renewable energy, I think if we can get the PACE program, enable legislation to do that, I think that would be the best way.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Benavente, in your discussions, you were taking a look at the cost of fuel, and we were talking a little bit about the ultra-low sulfur diesel. And the cost of ultra-low sulfur diesel is a little higher than oil. Can you help share with the audience on why we think that that's still a great idea?
Well, actually, it's not a little bit. The cost of ultra-low sulfur fuel is somewhere in the neighborhood of about $26 a million BTU compared to at today's prices, $18 per million BTU RFO. So that's where the big difference is. In addition to that, the efficiencies of our base load and the future base load that we're looking for will again jump to the next best technology of choice today that will bring our thermal efficiency from 40% today to about 50%. And yeah, I'm hearing that might be a challenge, but I'm sorry, we're still not moving from that 50%. We want to get the best, most efficient unit that we can get today. Coupled with that cost reduction in fuel costs, will really give us the best cost for ratepayers. Now let's take LNG and RFO price and compare that. Right now, the $18 BTU is about $110 a barrel of heavy oil that we buy from the market today. Diesel, $155 a barrel is what we buy today. If you look at that slide, the USA LNG price is around the $5 per million BTU. The Asian price at the height of the Asian problem here with Japan, the nuclear accident, if you will, was around $18 or so a BTU, a million BTU. Our hope is that we can bring this LNG pricing here to the island somewhere in the neighborhood of about $10 or so. And again, if we do that, for every $1 change in million BTU in our IRP is $100 million additional cost savings for our island customers. So again, we're journeying forward over the next year as we move forward, trying to site the LNG facilities, trying to get the best contracting model that we can get to bring LNG to the island. All of this will now begin to really come together so that we can definitively complete our plans to move forward. But as you can see, that curve on oil just continues to climb. Mm-hmm. Our understanding is that there are much more abundance of gas and actually more stable, that the nation is going to be the biggest, has the most abundant amount of natural gas. So therefore, hoping all of those together will really allow us the opportunities over the next several years to bring our costs substantially down. And together with renewables, today, what we do with heavy oil, we hedge, I'm not quite sure, Randy, about 25% or to 50% of our oil pricing. We do hedging to try and keep that oil price, so can't say level, but as much as possible. So what does renewables bring us? Renewables bring us actually the hedging mechanism now as we move through LNG. So if LNG is here and it starts to drive, the more renewables we get, it keeps our pricing so it doesn't move up as fast. So all that combination is what we're looking for.
Right. Thank you, sir. I think that was important for a lot of reasons, because the question we have in our mind is, what is it? How does it make a difference to us? And it makes a huge difference to us. Yes, sir. John.
I have three questions for John Benavente. One is, to what extent are commercial and industrial customers contributing to the renewable energy that you're going after? I think a lot of maybe smaller ones are coming forward, but what about some of the larger commercial and industrial users? Number two is there a way that you can prioritize your energy from the private sector users versus your generated power from your baseload generators?
Okay, first of all, I don't have the breakdown right with me, but I can provide as to what percentage of the, if you will, 1.3 megawatt today is the private, or when you say private net or commercial, you're talking about the 100 kilowatt per capacity customers. But I venture to say, just don't hold it to me, but it's probably mostly at this point residential, and about, I would say, around 25% being on the commercial side. And I'm sorry, your next question was?
Yes, prioritizing the source of energy between your base load versus the power supplied by users.
Actually, the power supplied by users, for example, the NRG project that's coming on, that's actually will be, when they whatever energy they generate as part of our contract, we plan to take that. And that energy was actually contracted to offset our most expensive energy, which was the Tengisan power plant, 24 cents a kilowatt hour. So that's why it's just kind of following the curve on the top side. As we move forward, again, that's what we're trying to get a balance, the best mix. We're trying to, I'm hearing PVs and all that maybe coming in 15 cents, 13, and I think our chairman here from the commission wanted 7 cents or 5 cents a kilowatt. But again, I'm not to venture, but whatever those, as we move forward, as we start determining really our capital, which generators we're going to put on, what our pricing for LNG is, we hope that, and as I've seen, that the cost for PVs starts to match in somewhere in that area. I'm not sure that it will come down completely to the conventional pricing. However, at least somewhere close, we'll be able to at least provide that as the hedging. So, again, in terms of priority, solar we can't control. It's going to have to come in and be produced, at least. But before we contract more, we have to ensure that we're not just, increasing our costs. Without really evaluating the full benefit, and therefore, by going to conventional units, bringing down that cost as much as possible. That's kind of our goal at this time.
Yeah, my third question has to do with wind energy, and there hasn't been much said about it so far in the program. But GPA came out with a one experimental solar wind power energy, and it's been out for bid 3 times, and then it's been turned down. Can you explain why it's been turned down, and do you plan to bring it out again? Thank you.
Yeah, I think what we went out with the first time, we received a grant for the wind energy, and for whatever size. So when we looked at all the process and economics of that, I think we had to put in an additional $750,000 of our money to be able to complete that pilot project. So we kind of, is there anything else we can do? And if you will, they were able to go out again and get additional funding on looking for ways to be able to do that. So I believe we're getting close to, and Mr. John Cruz here can give you a much better timeline. But again, I believe we're getting close to going out with that and utilizing that grant to put up that wind energy, the wind turbine at the Cotao area. And again, we invested money to determine what is the potential wind, what are the wind potential due to wind speeds over in the Cotao area. And that, for those that are not familiar with Cotao, is really going from the Windward Hills area all the way towards down towards Agate Santa Rita. There seems to be a wind tunnel section in the island that provides some good potential for wind energy. So, John, I think, can give you a more definitive date when we'll be going out with that project.
Thank you very much, John.
Thanks.